Okay, so the title of this share is called The Sugar-Coated Lie. And it's very rare that I give a title to a share before I give the share, because normally it sort of depends on the content. I reflect and I pick something and I give it a title. But it was actually Rabbi Stepsky who chose the title. He liked the sound of it. And I had to fit my share around the title. So I thought, what can I talk about? Donuts? Or because I actually put donuts on the poster. Did anyone notice that? You put donuts on the... I thought an hour on donuts is not really, it's not compelling. It's not worth bringing the whole array of cameras for all that. So I'm going to talk about Yosef. Because this week is the culmination of the whole saga of Yosef HaTzadik. And what happens is really a blueprint for the Jewish people throughout the generations. So I want to take you back to the crux of that moment. I'm assuming we all know the basic story of what happened with Yosef. He was sold to Mitzrayim. He was taken as a servant by somebody called Potiphar, and we know that Potiphar was married, and Yosef was accosted by both his master and his master's wife at different times. Then it happened that his master and his master's wife's adopted daughter ended up marrying Yosef. So on reflection, Yosef had this very strange situation where both his father-in-law and his mother-in-law had designs on him. Okay, not exactly the ideal Shalom Bayis situation, but hey, come in, it's okay. Mind the cameras. And therefore, there was something to be said about his situation. And then we know that he got thrown into the pit, and he was there for 10 years, and then another 2 years, and he was taken out, and then through this whole situation, he became the viceroy of Egypt. That in itself was a massive miracle. The whole thing, you couldn't make it up. Literally, you could not make such a story up. For me, it's a proof of God. Come in, take a seat. So, we intercept the story at the point where Joseph's brothers have come to Egypt, and they are now standing in front of him. And I missed out a couple of bits actually, that Yosef was playing this saga. He was making this whole scenario, and he was trying to make good on the whole idea behind him being taken down to Egypt. He was trying to reverse and correct the issues that had happened to him, and the culpability rather of his brothers over Yosef's enslavement. So the brothers are standing in Pharaoh's palace, and now Yosef is there. And of course they don't know that it's Yosef. They think he's somebody called Tzafnat Paneach, the viceroy of Egypt. And now Yosef is this far away from revealing his identity. But before he does that, he takes a very strange course of action. He tells all the Egyptian courtiers, he sends them all out. Very strange, because now he's leaving himself vulnerable to attack, because these brothers who are standing in front of him, they mean business. They want to kill every person in Egypt, all across the land. You have to understand, Egypt was the epicenter of the world at the time. Yeah, it was the equivalent of, let's say, the USA, the Western world. And Pharaoh, in effect, was the king of the world, which meant, by extension, Joseph was the second in charge of the world. Now, you know, very often people who are second in charge are really in charge. You know, like you have husband and wife. where the husband is in the public eye and the wife might be at home, but who's really in charge? Yeah. So this was one of those situations. The Pharaoh was almost like a vassal leader. He was Pharaoh in title, but who was really pulling all the strings? It was Joseph. Yeah. There's always a Jew behind the scenes doing something. Yeah. So Joseph was in fact the king of the world. Now he was in front of these 10 men who were spitting blood, and he left himself in great danger. Why did he do that? So there's one very simple answer, and it really characterizes Joseph and what he was intending to do and what he stood for. Because his whole raison d'etre was to be what's the best word? He was to be a protector of his brothers. Now imagine if he would have come out he would have blurted out this statement that I am Joseph, and then all the Egyptians would be there, and then the brothers would be looking at each other, what on earth is going on? And then all these Egyptians looking and thinking, what? We thought you were the leader of Egypt, and now you're their brother? And suddenly the brothers would be terribly, terribly embarrassed. We've made a little bit of a mistake in our lives. We thought we were one thing, and now the truth is another thing. So the one and only reason, I can't say the one and only reason, one of the main reasons why Joseph sent his brothers out was to prevent their embarrassment. Can you see what's happening here? Joseph literally put his life on the line to save his brothers from being ashamed, from being embarrassed in front of other people. Tremendous midah. Now, before I go on to that statement, that incredible revelation, I want to tell you a quote that I read only today when I was preparing this share. I'd rather hear the bitter truth than a sugar-coated lie. Think about that for a minute. Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes when you hear the unadulterated emet, it changes things. It makes us have to change. So could there be a situation where instead of hearing the truth and knowing the absolute 100% truth, would we rather have that with all its impact and with all its ramifications? Or would we rather sit in some sterilized scenario where we're living a lie but we're comfortable, we're okay? Like the song, Comfortably Numb. Yeah? Don't listen to it. But anyway, it's a nice title. Yeah? So, would we rather live in that scenario where everything is fine and, we're poodling along, mooching along, rolling along, yeah? But really what's going on behind us, it's like the Matrix. We're not living in reality. We're living in a complete pseudo-reality. So I'm going to explore this concept, and let's see if we can come to some type of answer by the end of the shir. So, Joseph sends the Egyptians out. He's ready for the statement. He comes out with, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph. 2 words. And suddenly the whole world is turned upside down for these brothers. And the Medrash tells us, woe to us on the day of rebuke, the day of judgment, because that will be a day of rebuke, because when ultimately all the Jews will stand before God, and God will tell us the truth, and the truth is apparent, as looking at something right in front of your eyes, and then we will all feel really embarrassed because it's like a rebuke. Because just like Joseph rebuked his brothers, so God will rebuke us with the truth. So very simple question I'm going to ask you. Joseph just said, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph. Yeah? Where's the rebuke? He was just telling, if you look at it on the face of it, imagine if somebody told you, I'm David. And you said, oh, I didn't know you were David. I'm Moshe. How are you? Fine, thank you. How are you? It's like introducing somebody, it doesn't sound like very rebuke-ish. There's no tochacha. Sorry?
He's reminding what they were trying to hide.
That's part of the answer. But on the face of it, it's just, what type of thing is this? He's just telling who he is. When we think of rebuke, what do we think of? We think of fire and brimstone and how could you do this? What were you thinking of? Yeah? And then people get very offended and people want to close up. And so where's the rebuke? So I want to tell you something that... You understand the question? Okay. In the Medrash it tells us that what Joseph told his brothers was actually a rebuke. Yeah, it's called tochacha in Lashon HaKodesh. If Joseph is merely telling them, I am Yosef, and he does say afterwards, Ha'od avi chai, is my father still alive? That is a clarification of truth. There's no words of rebuke. When you rebuke somebody, it's like you tell them off, for want of a better phrase. Yeah? So I'm saying, why are these words...
Anger.
Yes, that's the implication. When you rebuke somebody, it's either from anger or it's not going to be pretty, put it that way. When you rebuke somebody, it's hard to sort of react to that type of criticism without feeling defensive, without closing up, without wanting to go, or something like that. Depends who you are. Depends. Sorry, there are ladies in the room. I don't want to start getting violent. But it's not always going to be, touchy-feely. Yeah? So, quite simply, where's the words of rebuke? So I want to tell you something that, oddly enough, I heard from Rabbi Kirsch, who's the rabbi of the JLE, in case people who are watching this on Torah anytime don't know who Rabbi Kirsch is, or who don't know who the JLE is. We're talking this evening from the Jewish Learning Exchange in Golders Green, and the rabbi here who set it up, his name is Rabbi Danny Kirsch, he told me the following parable, probably the best part of 20 years ago. He said there was once a man who had to go and see the king, and he was on his way. He put on his best suit, and he's looking nice, he's looking fantastic, and he gets to the palace, goes through security, has his bag checked, and he's walking down the corridor, and he gets a tap on his shoulder. He turns around and he sees it's one of the king's royal courtiers. And the king's royal courtier says to the man, excuse me, can I just stop you there? So immediately the man starts feeling very intimidated. He says, I'm sorry, I've already passed through security. I've shown my bag. I've got my pass. You can see it's got my name on it. Why are you stopping me? I'm just about to see the king. My appointment is in 1 minute's time. Is there something that I've missed out? So the courtier says, yes, I think you need to know this. He says, well, what do I possibly need to know? He says, could you please remove your jacket? So now the fellow's thinking, take my jacket off? Am I hiding a bomb under here? So he takes off his jacket. He says, turn the jacket round. He turns the jacket round and he sees on the back of his jacket there's a large stain on the back. The courtier says, I'm terribly sorry, but I know for a fact if you would have gone into the king and seen him with this stain on your back, he would have gone doolally. He probably wouldn't have heard one word you were saying. He would have turned you around and you would have expelled immediately. You can't go and see the king with a stain on your jacket like that. So now the fellow says, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. I'm so grateful. If you wouldn't have stopped me, my whole mission would have been cancelled. Thank you. How could I ever thank you? This, says Rabbi Kirsch, is the essence of tochacha, the essence of rebuke. Rebuke does not mean fire and brimstone, shouting and cursing and hurling abuse and making people feel, ooh. That's not what it is. Rebuke is simply clarification of the truth. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be harsh words. Doesn't have to be anything more than that. It just has to be, you thought this was this, but really just turn it around. It's actually this. Oh, fine. Thank you so much. So Joseph was on the face of it just saying, you thought you were talking to a despotic, tyrannical ruler who wanted to make your life misery. No. Truth is, turn it around. I'm Joseph. Ta-da! That's all it takes. It just means setting a person straight. That's the essence of tochacha. And if we take that a little bit further, that's only for the first 2 words. There's another 3 words. 3 words. Ha'od avichai. Is my father still alive? Now, does that also form part of the rebuke? What does that mean? Again, you have to place the story in context, because they were just talking about their father. They were just talking about how poor dad's at home and his sons are all away, and then his little Yingala, Binyamin, has been taken and he's never going to see him again, and poor dad, and what's he going to do? He's old and he's frail. So why are you asking me, how's dad? What do you think we were talking about for the past 20 minutes? What, making this up? And of course, because you're Joseph, you know about dad. So what's all this? Why are you bringing all this up? I'm going to give you 2 answers. Firstly, he was again clarifying the situation. He was telling the brothers, you know, you were talking to me about dad, and you were talking to me about how he misses his son Binyamin, and how he thought he would never see him again, and how he's suffering. Well, don't you think he was suffering because of his other son who was missing, namely me? What about dad's feelings for me? Didn't you think about that? Or did you put me out of the picture? Or did you sugarcoat that lie as well? So that was also part of the rebuke. He was telling them, you know, it's very good you're having compassion about your younger brother, but there's another brother in the picture you also missed out. So that was clarification of the truth. But there's another deeper answer, which is really reflective of what we were talking about unadulterated truth. Because in revealing that he was their brother, and in revealing the fact that their father must have suffered terribly over 22 years, he was actually telling them that their entire previous 22 years, we're not talking about a couple of months, we're talking about like a big chunk of a person's life. 22 years you've been living a lie. Everything you held sacred, the fact that you expelled me from your presence, you don't want to give me the time of day, you wouldn't even look at me, you put me in chayram, which means excommunication. Yeah, you thought I was telling tales about you. You formed a beis din. You judged me. You were going to kill me. Then you put me in a pit. You sold me. You bought shoes. That's what I'm worth to you. A pair of shoes. And they weren't even designer. And now I find myself being attacked by my future father-in-law, who was weird. Hamavin Yavin. And my mother-in-law, I could tell you a few stories about her. And then I get chucked into a hole for a total of 12 years. All this. And you were sitting there. You thought, yeah, we did the right thing. You were sitting pretty. No problem. We're correct. 22 years wiped away in one moment. Now that's something which is, what's the word? It's sobering, to say the least.
Well, what about
Now,
this?
sorry, can we leave questions to the end? Write them down, don't forget them, but I just got a little bit to get through, and then we'll take the questions at the end. Sorry. So, in effect, what were the brothers doing when they made all this business, when they sold him and they judged him, etc., etc., etc.? They knew very well what they were doing, because Yosef fed them with a little bit of information. What did he do? He revealed his dreams. He told them, there's a dream with the stars and bowing down and all this. There's 2 dreams. So the brothers were fully aware of what Joseph was predicting. And what did the brothers try to do? They tried to thwart that plan. Remember they said, here comes our brother the dreamer, let's see what's going to happen about his dreams now. And then they tried to change the course of their own destiny by doing this whole thing. So now Joseph was telling them, you tried to thwart God's plans? You cannot do that. You can see you can't do that. But more than that, if you try and thwart the plan of God, God will not only completely sidestep what you're trying to do, He will actually make you not part of the problem, but part of the solution. Let me explain what I mean. I'll explain to you with a story about King Solomon. We all know who King Solomon is, wisest of all men, son of David HaMelech, progenitor of the Messiah. So, there's a story told about Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. He had two scribes, two sophrim. People used to, a dab hand with a pen, calligraphy pen, So, he was very close to these two scribes. And King Solomon was not just an ordinary king. He was a king who was over and above anybody in the world at the time, or probably who ever will be. He had real Yiddish chokhmah. He could talk to birds. He could talk to animals. He could talk to about anything. And he used to have a regular audience with, of all people, of all things, the angel of death. Not somebody you come across every day in conversation. But he had a regular audience with the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. So, it happened that once the angel of death was in front of King Solomon, and the angel of death looked a little bit green under the gills, a little bit under the weather. So King Solomon said, is everything okay? Maybe your sword needs a bit of sharpening, or not many people on the death list today. Are you bored? He says, no, you don't understand. No, tell me, says King Solomon. Tell me, I'm listening. He says, well, there are two people I had on my list today, my death list, and I can't seem to knock them off. He says, who are these two people? He says, well, you're not going to like this. So King Solomon said, okay, try me. Actually, it's those two scribes. You mean the scribes in my palace? You had to kill them today, both of them? Why? He said, well, I can't really go into that, but suffice to say that something's preventing me from killing them. He says, why? What is it? Well, I can't really go into it, but, whatever. So King Solomon said, okay, I see, I understand this is obviously distressing for you because, I'm sure you've got your own, your own workflow and how you do things. And this is obviously a little bit of a stutter in your progress report, and probably have to answer to God. And okay, you know what? I hear what you're saying. Let me see. So King Solomon dashes off. Of course, he goes straight back to those two scribes. He says to them, quick, you don't understand, you're going to die today. And, just trust me. Come with me. I've got the best place for you to go. Now, there was a place in the times of King Solomon called Luz. Luz was a town where nobody who was within the environs, within the perimeter of the town of Luz, ever died. They were like, the Malach HaMavet was powerless over those people. I wish I knew where that place was. I would rush there. I would get a one-way ticket. So he said, quick, pick up your thing. Don't even pick up your things. Just pick up your legs and run. Go, take the fastest wagon. Get there. So of course they listened to the king. Get on the wagon. Yeah, they're going really fast. They're just about, this is the essence of frustration. They're just about to get to the gates of the city, and they both die. Now, when King Solomon hears this, he says, oh, so close. So then he meets the Malach HaMavet again, and he's all smiles. I did my job. So King Solomon said, well, what happened? Why are you so happy? Well, why did you? He said, King Solomon, Your Majesty, let me explain to you something. When a person's time is up, his time is up. It's all to do with time and place. those two scribes had to be in a certain place at a certain time. They would not have died unless they were in that place. They had to get to that place, come what may. You happened to want to save them, to want to go against what God had planned for them. But not only were you completely wrong in doing what you were doing, you actually helped me in getting my two victims into the right place at the right time. I want to thank you, sir. Very nice. What do we learn from this story? It's a very important lesson. You can try and reverse what God has in plan. But not only will God stop you what you're doing, he'll actually make you part of the whole saga. So God not only thwarted the plans of the brothers, he made them part of what they were trying to prevent. So in other words, they wanted to prevent Joseph becoming the leader. Oh, you're having dreams. We're going to bow down to you. We'll see about that. Put him in a pit. Snakes and scorpions. Then we'll see what's going to happen to your dreams. What happens? Exactly the opposite. They helped him on his way eventually to become the viceroy of Egypt. So they were the key players, if you think about it. They were the key players in getting Joseph into that royal palace, onto that throne. Bob's your uncle. You see? You can run, but you can't hide. That's what comes out of here. You can run, but you can't hide. And a tremendous lesson comes out of this, because many times we try and fight against something. Now, again, if there's a prophecy, it's not directly related. If there's a prophecy for the good, it has to happen. If there's a prophecy for the bad, it doesn't necessarily have to happen. That's something we always need to bear in mind. Yeah, there are various prophecies for things which are terrible and etc. They're not set in stone. They can be averted. But for the good, that's it. You have to live with it. If it's good, prophecy for the good, it's got to come true. Yeah, which is not such a bad thing. Now let's get back to the brothers. They are literally crumbling from their high position. They're literally like crumbling like dust, shattered, completely shattered in the face of this truth. Now there's somebody else in history who also had the same type of incident, the same type of test. But he was somebody who was completely the opposite. You couldn't get more further than the brothers. And that person, his name was Bilam. Now in a few months' time, Bezrat Hashem will all be sitting in shul, and we'll all be hearing the Parsha of Balak, and that has the whole story of Bilam. Now again, I assume you all know the story of Bilam, but very briefly, he was the spiritual equivalent of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeah, so Moshe Rabbeinu was the leader of the Jews, the leader of the nations was Bilam. Okay, they had some type of equivalence. It's very hard to understand how these two men had anything in common other than they had a physical body. Yeah, other than that, they were completely different. But they each had, the one thing they did have in common, I tell a lie, is that they were both prophets of sorts. Different type of prophets, but they were both prophets. So, we know the story. Bilam's on his donkey, riding along, and there's other people with him who were sent by King Balak, and he's going along on his merry way to curse the Jews, as you do. So now he has this whole thing where the donkey wouldn't move, and he's whipping the donkey, and then suddenly the donkey turns around and he doesn't say Eeyore like he normally does. He starts talking. He starts talking in Lashon HaKodesh, or whatever language it was. Maybe it was English, I don't know. But he was talking words. So now what does Bilam do? Does he crumble in the... No, he starts answering back the donkey. Starts telling him, I would have killed you, and this and that. And then suddenly the donkey comes out with a little grain of truth. He says, am I not the faithful donkey that you rode every day? Etc. And he started saying things that maybe incriminated Bilam somewhat, made him seem a little bit less rosy than he was. Not that he was rosy, but a little bit less, put it this way, less user-friendly. we say delicately. And of course, who was with him? There was a lot of people with him. People on donkeys, people on horses and everything. They were all going together. And suddenly they hear this statement, this incriminating statement from the donkey. And now what does Bilam say? Absolutely nothing. He's gobsmacked. Because he's just been embarrassed in front of all these people. His donkey is making shish kebab out of him. And he can't say anything. Because the donkey spoke the truth. He spoke the 100% emet. And he couldn't say anything. No excuses, no lies, no Watergate, nothing. That's what happens in the face of truth. The real truth, you can't say anything. There's no kickback, there's no answer, there's no tachbolot, we say in Hebrew. There's nothing more to add. So nothing stands in the way of truth. And I'll give you one more example. And this is from the Torah. This is about the parasha of the Metzorah. Now, you might have heard of the statement, the phrase tzaraat. That is very incorrectly and loosely translated as leprosy. It is not leprosy, but let's translate it as leprosy for want of a better word. Tzaraat is not a physical illness, it's a spiritual illness which has a physical manifestation. Yeah? If you look at the parasha of Tazria and Metzorah, it talks about the person who has this type of type of spiritual malady. So, very briefly, it doesn't manifest. This illness is most commonly attributed to the sin of Lashon Hara. If a person in biblical times said something of Lashon Hara or Richilot or something like that, something bad, then he would stand the risk of getting this physical discoloration of his skin, which is, as I said, it's a spiritual defect. It takes physical manifestation in three ways. First, it would be apparent on the person's house. It would show us a discoloration on the walls. Then if a person doesn't get the hint, it would go onto his clothing. And if he still wouldn't get the hint and still wouldn't do something about it, it would go on his skin. That's the worst type, yeah? You want to catch it when it's on the house. You want to get it sorted out. You want to, start doing teshuvah there and then. Now, I'll tell you something you may or may not know. That this illness called tzaraat is not always attributed to Lashon Hara. It can sometimes come about through another type of sin. What's this other type of sin? It's called tsar ayin. Tsar is also in the word Mitzrayim. Ayin we know is eye, like Ayin Hara or Ayin Tov. Yeah. So tsar, which means narrow, because Mitzrayim was very narrow, yeah, and very enclosing and very stifling. So tsar means narrow. Ayin means eye. What does narrow-eyed mean? It means that a person is not generous of spirit. A person is not, he's not a giving person. Now we know, to exist in this life, we have to give. That's what we're put here for. We're not put here to take, but we're put here to give. Any way we can give, we give. We try and give. It doesn't mean literally giving everything. It doesn't mean say, have the shirt off my back, take all my money, here's my credit card, I'll tell you my PIN number. That's not what it means, yeah? It doesn't mean walking and seeing a drug addict in the street and saying, here, take all my cash in my pocket. It can mean giving and it can mean taking, which can also mean giving. But that's a separate subject. But anyway, a person has to be a giving person. If a person is not like that, again, he will run the risk of getting tzaraat. So now, let's imagine, let's give somebody a name. Let's call him Chaim. So Chaim now is a bit of a miser. People come knock on his door. Can I borrow the lawnmower? Can I borrow your spade? Can I borrow your pen? Oh, I haven't got those things. Do you think I'm made of money? If I could afford a new lawnmower, I could do this and that. And suddenly he's got all these excuses, I can't, and then he gets tzaraat on the house. And what happens? I missed out a little bit of information. What happens when a person gets this discoloration on the house? Well, these bailiffs come in and they have to take all the house contents out of the house and dump it in the public thoroughfare. Why? Because the house is now running a risk of becoming tameh, becoming impure. And anything under that roof also runs a risk of being impure. So you've got to take everything out because you don't want any impure, because otherwise everything will become impure, and that's ridiculous. So it all gets taken out, dumped in the middle of the street. Now what happens? People are walking past. Oh, what happened to Chaim? He's got a mark on his house. Actually, they're not saying that, but they're thinking that, because if you say that, it's Lashon Hara. So they're walking past, they see these discolorations on the house, and they see loads of stuff on the street. There's this CD player, there's all his designer clothes, there's his electric guitar he claimed he never... all this stuff, and then suddenly I think, oh my gosh, I asked to borrow that last week. He told me I didn't have one. And then I just asked him, look, all my shirts are in the wash. Have you got a spare shirt for me? I'm your size, man. I haven't got... There's 15 iron shirts over there. Suddenly it's all his dirty washing, excuse the phrase, is all out in the open. So people can see with their own eyes. You see? Nothing stands in the way of truth. You cannot hide behind the excuse. You cannot hide behind the excuse. It's such a common malady. We all do it. Myself included. We all give excuse. I haven't got time. You know how busy I am? You asked me for this favor. Look, you know what? If you knew how busy I was, you wouldn't even bother asking me. Everybody does it. I'm not casting any blame. If I'm casting blame, I'm the first to dress for the blame. Yeah? I'm just bringing something out and putting something out there. Okay, let me move on to another slightly related subject. If you have a Chumash in front of you, you want to turn to Perek Mem Hey, Pasuk Chaf Daled. That's 45:24 in your Bibles. Vayishalach et echav vayelechu vayomer lehem al tigruzu badarech. Now that everything's out in the open, Joseph says, I'm Joseph. The brothers, oh, that's nice, whatever. And everything is all getting sorted out. So Joseph says, quick, go back to Israel, go back to Canaan, go get Dad, bring him back here pronto. Yeah, because it's been 22 years, we've got a lot of catching up to do. Fine, so the brothers go. He says, hang on, you know what, just before you go, don't get angry with each other on the way, because that's not good. Okay, guys, listen, no, just, maybe have a sandwich or something, or sing a song, but just don't get into any confrontation, okay? Is that all right? What's all this about? What would they be arguing about? They've just seen their brother. They haven't seen him for 22 years. Why would they be arguing about it? Well, the simple answer is they would be arguing about the fact that they sold a brother. You told me to sell him. Well, you told me. Well, you should have stopped. If you would have said something, we wouldn't have done it. Yeah, but you were the... And they would have got into all this machloket. But there's another idea here. That even if they would be arguing with each other, Yosef was telling them, you know what? That's all irrelevant. All that argument, it was you, it was me, you should have done this, you should have done that. Put that aside. Because whatever happened to get me here to be the viceroy of Egypt, that was all Hashem's plan. And you were part of that plan. So don't bother arguing about it, because it was always going to happen. So what you would do, arguing, blame, pointing the finger, that's not going to do anybody any favors. That's totally irrelevant. Again, a tremendous idea comes out of here. How many times have we said, I could have, I should have, I would have? Like that famous film quote, I could have been a contender. I don't know who said it or from what film. Baruch Hashem. Yeah? I could have been a contender. What do you mean you could have been a contender? You're living in the past? If you want to be a contender, you would have been a contender. If you're not meant to be a contender, you're not going to be a contender. You have to do what you have to do. I had a nice quote. They said, the past is a good place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. Think about it very carefully. People always live in the past. You know, if I would have done this, I could have been a millionaire. And I could have still been with my wife. And we would never got divorced. And she would never got ill. And I would never suffer this. And I could have had this and my houses and my cars. Come on. Don't live there. Don't live there. Live in the present and live for the future. Don't get stuck in what was and what could have been. I should have, I would have, I could have. It's no good. You've got to keep your eyes focused on the future, on what you can be, and what you should be, and what you will be. And also there was this whole thing, I don't know if you know about this, that Joseph sent wagons back to his father. He sent agalot. You know all about this? Because he was giving his father a hint. Dad, you know, when we were last together 22 years ago, we were learning Torah together. And the last subject we were learning in Torah was the subject of the Egla Arufa. Without going into it now, because time is a bit short. We were learning about the decapitated calf. Yeah, there's a whole thing. If there's a dead body found between two cities and whatever, I won't go into it now. It's a long subject. But anyway, it's to do halachot to do with a calf. The word for calf in Lashon HaKodesh is egla. The word for wagon in Lashon HaKodesh is agala. Egla and agala are related. So Yosef was sending a hint to his father by sending his father wagons that, Dad, you know what? What we were learning 22 years ago is still fresh in my mind. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I'm on it. I'm still thinking about it. And I never changed. I never did anything bad. I'm still living your Torah. Very nice. Now, again, without going into the whole thing about Egla Arufa, the reason why we bring this calf and have it decapitated is because there was a person found outside of the city limits. Yeah, this is a halakha. If there's a person, a mysterious body found in the middle of a field outside the city limits, then we say that person had to have died because somebody didn't let him into the city. Somebody didn't say, hey, you want to meet? You need someone for Shabbos? You need a meal? Come by me. I'll look after you. Nobody said that to him. So he went out, and now he what's the word? He succumbed to the elements, and he died. So who's responsible? Whoever the dead body, the nearest town to this dead body, the proximity between the body and the city, that's the place that was culpable. But what happens if there's two cities and the dead body is equidistant between the two cities? Well, then you bring an agala and you decapitate it, and it's a whole thing. But what's the essence behind that whole thing? Very strange idea. The essence is that the whole idea about a dead body, nobody knows who it is. It's a mystery. Nobody knows why that dead body was there. Nobody knows who killed him, who exactly is responsible. So Yosef was saying something else when he sent his brothers away with the wagons. He was saying, just like that whole thing that I was learning with my father is a mystery and you'll never get to the bottom of it, so too, why did I have to come here through this strange, crazy story you couldn't even make up? That's also a mystery. So you know what? The sooner you realize that life is a mystery and you never get to the bottom of it, the better. Get with real life. Stop digging around trying to find answers for stuff you don't even need to know the answers. Look at a mobile phone. Not now, when I'm talking, but if you look at a mobile phone, yeah? If I ask anyone in this room, or anyone watching on TorahAnytime.com, do you know how that mobile phone works? I guarantee you, maybe one, but probably not even one person will say, I know. well, you've got the little antenna here, and then it goes through the resistors and the capacitors and the circuit board and the SIM card and who cares? Now I ask everyone again, who uses a mobile phone? Probably everybody, except for some old grandma sitting in Ohio, will probably be using a mobile phone. What am I trying to say? Do you need to know how the phone works to use it? No. Do we still use it? Yes. We don't need to know. We don't need to know the inner workings and why does this happen. Okay, we can ask. It's good to ask. We're Jews, we always ask. Jews always ask questions. We invite questions. But to say, I don't believe unless I understand everything, that we don't do. If you want to understand everything about God and then you believe, well then put your mobile phone down, because forget about knowing about God, you don't know how your phone works. Something to think about. Just something to think about. Now, once the brothers get back and Yaakov finally gets the information that his beloved son is alive, that's another whole story, because they didn't want to let him here directly. They had to bring his granddaughter who bought a little cello or a violin or something, played a nice little song that hinted, Joseph is alive. Yeah, she made a whole thing, and then he suddenly started thinking about it, and he got the information slowly, and then it sunk in. The news sunk in. He didn't get it all in one go, like that, because that's not good for old people. They can have, God forbid. So he hears information now. Now he has one instruction. He's telling the brothers. He goes to Yehuda, who's one of the pivotal brothers in the whole saga. He says, Yehuda, my son, I want you to go ahead first, before everybody else, because I want you to do something there. I'll tell you in a minute. And once that's done, then we'll move in. What was this thing that Yehuda was sent to do that was so important? What was it like? To make sure there's hot water in the hotel? To make sure there's a swimming pool nearby? Are there mangoes available? Everyone likes mangoes. Make sure there's lots of mangoes so we can eat properly. No. Yehuda was selected, I should add, over and above all the brothers, for the reason which I'll tell you in a minute. We're told via the Medrash, he was sent to set up a yeshiva, to make sure Egypt had a proper makom Torah, proper place where they could sit and learn and steig and not slide. Steig, don't slide. Good phrase, yeah? So he had to go and do the groundwork. So what comes out of this? It's very important. We don't just move anywhere. We don't want to, people go on holiday. They always say, I want to go where there's no Jews. Yeah, I've had Jews all year. I want 2 weeks, no Jews. I want only nothing, or maybe a few Gentiles, a few cows or sheep. I don't mind them, but no Jews. Yeah, no Jews. But that's okay for a holiday. Not necessarily, but for some people that might be what they want to do. But to live in a place where there's no foundation of Torah, that's no good. So that has to be the first thing. That's paramount. So let me ask another question. Why was Yehuda selected? Why not Levi? Levi was the one who always stood up for God, and he was the one who, from Levi come the Kohanim. The Kohanim are the ones who teach the Jews. They're really good, I'm telling you. Kohanim and Leviim are really good. When they're switched on, they're unstoppable. I say this from personal experience. One of my chavrutas is a Levi, and he's unstoppable. He learns, and they're actually quite good at what they do. Why wasn't Levi sent? What about Yisachar? The Yisachar and Zevulun partnership? Yisachar was learning Torah all night, supporting his brother. How nice! Brotherly love. Send Yisachar. Why Yehuda? What's Yehuda got to do with it? Listen to this. Because Yehuda had something that none of the brothers had, certainly not to this extent. Because Yehuda, if you remember back to the story of Yehuda and Tamar, when Tamar was accused of having a pregnancy outside of marriage. She was led to be burnt. And then Tamar says, look, recognize this stick. Whoever owns this stick is the father of my baby, or babies as it turned out. And then Judah says, oh, I've got a stick just like that. It's mine. So he had to admit in front of everybody, I'm the father of this child. What could he have done? I say, what could he have done? What would somebody else have done in that situation? They would have created the Yehudagate scandal. Yeah, they would have said, look, okay, she's pregnant. I hear, but it's nothing to do with me. As it happens, she was this and this and I was somewhere else, and I've got proof and I can show you and I've got witnesses and everything. And make a whole big thing. Or just pull her to one and say, excuse me, you know what? Tamar, come here. I hear what you're saying. Can we just keep this a little bit quiet? Maybe for the next couple of days while I run away. Or, you know what? I'll get you a one-way ticket to the Bahamas. I'll set you up. No problem. I'll look after the child. I'll send you money every month. He admitted 100% what he did. In front of everybody. In front of his father and his grandfather. Do you know what that is? To be embarrassed in front of other people? In front of your dad? In front of your grandfather? To be embarrassed like that? Hey, she's pregnant because of me. My gosh. He admitted the truth under all and every circumstance. That's the type of person you want to send to set up a Makom Torah. That's the type of person you want to have teaching the children. Hang on, before we get the wrong idea. Yeah? Why does this qualify a person to become a Rosh Yeshiva or somebody who sets up a Makom Torah? The answer is, a teacher has to have a certain quality that is really essential for being a teacher. And that is the ability to admit when they are wrong. In fact, really, everybody has to do that. Because everyone makes mistakes. I challenge you, look through the entire Chumash. Look through the Bible from beginning to end. Find me one person who lived a life without any mistakes. Find me one person. Now, hang on. There are 4 people, they say, who never did a sin. One of them was Binyamin. There was Binyamin, there was Yishai, there was Kilav, and there was Amram, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah? Whoever knows these people, Binyamin, son of Yaakov, and Yishai was the father of David HaMelech, Kilav was the son of David HaMelech, Yishai was the father, was missing one? Kilav, no, not Moshe. Amram was the father of Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so they never did anything wrong, fine. But mistakes. We're talking about mistakes, not sins. Who doesn't make a mistake? Even women make mistakes. Yeah? Yeah, I know. It's hard to believe. But we're all human. So if you make a mistake, own up. I'm not saying blurt out the truth. Every time something inadvertent happens, you come up with the truth and it's hurtful, it's an embarrassment. Okay, fine. There's a time and place for everything. But if there's a mistake, and of course mistakes sometimes impact other people, don't just cover it up. Don't just live that sugar-coated lie. Sometimes you have to just live with that mistake and say, I am only human, and accept me because I'm only human, and I want to get better. And that's an essential quality for a teacher. Because a teacher can sometimes just, say, look, I'm teaching you. I'm the one in charge here. I'm the one who's giving the lessons. So I should admit I'm wrong. And that's going to be embarrassing for me. And nobody will take me seriously. And people will think, this person teaches my children. This person teaches Talmidim. I'll tell you something, and I heard this from somebody very wise, that if you admit a mistake to people who you're trying to influence or trying to teach, they will take you even more seriously than they did before. Try it. I'm not saying make a mistake on purpose, but I'm saying next time you make a mistake and you decide, I want to admit, I want to stand by it, you'll see they will respect you even more. They will respect you even more. And again, I'm not saying every situation means you've got to straight away blurt out the truth and whatever, because there's a time and a place. Only you can be the judge. I cannot be the judge. God is the judge, obviously, but only you can be the judge of your own individual circumstances. It's just something, again, it's something else to think about. I'm just going to finish off. I'm going to tell you a couple of things about Yosef, and then I'm going to finish with that. Okay? To show you the integrity, the unbelievable integrity of Yosef HaTzadik. You know, we don't call people tzaddik in the Torah for nothing. Yeah? The word tzaddik gets bandied around these days. Oh, tzaddikal, little tzaddik. Yeah? We say it because we want to be affectionate, we want to be nice. But really the title, Yosef HaTzadik, how did he get that? We don't say Moshe HaTzadik. We don't say David HaTzadik, or Aaron, or Moshe, or anybody. Just Yosef, the only one. Why? We already said he put his life in danger because he sent his men out and he was alone with his brothers. He put his life on the line. That's one thing. I'll tell you something else which you may or may not know. That Yosef's father, Yaakov, came down to Egypt and he was there for 17 years until he died. So he spent 17 years with his beloved son Yosef, who he had not seen for 22 years. The following is a fact. Yosef did not visit his father once during those 17 years. Not once. You should be going, that can't be true. You should be visiting him every day. Dad, you know, there's a lot to catch up. There's 22 years, it's not like nothing. There's a lot to catch up on. What were you doing? Were you okay? I'll tell you what I was doing. I was in a pit. I was being chased by, my future mother-in-law. And I interpreted dreams. There was a butler and a baker. No, he never went to visit his father once. Why is that? I'm not saying they never saw each other. I'm sure Yaakov came to visit Yosef, but Yosef go to visit Yaakov not once. I'm sure they saw each other on public occasions, etc. But they were never alone. That's a hint. They were never alone together. Why was Yosef so particular that they weren't going to be alone together? And the answer is as follows. Because if the two of them were alone together, remember Yaakov never knew anything about the plan to sell the brothers. It was totally kept in the dark. All he knew was he got Joseph's coat, there was a bit of animal blood on it, he's been eaten by a dog, a fox, a cat, a lion, whatever it is. Sorry, Dad. That's all he knew. He had to live 22 years with that. My son was eaten by a jackal. So Yaakov, if they were alone together, Yaakov could have just said, my son Yosef, that can't be true, all that stuff with that animal. Obviously you won't eat my animal. Just tell me, what really happened? Is there something I need to know? What happened with your brothers? And then Yosef, because Yosef's a good boy, he's not going to disobey his father. He's not going to tell his father a sugar-coated lie. He says, Dad, my back's against the wall, I have to tell you the truth. And he would have told them the whole truth. Now that would have embarrassed the brothers terribly. And probably Yaakov would have had a little bit of kapeda, he would have had a little bit of, what's the word? Not revenge. He would have been sharp with his sons. How could you have done that to your brother? You wanted to kill him? You put him in a pit with snakes and scorpions? How could you do that to your kid brother? And he would have done something, maybe he would have thought something, who knows? But again, Yosef did not want to embarrass his brothers under any circumstances. So he forewent the privilege of spending private time with his father because he didn't want to embarrass his father. What unbelievable midas. That's one reason why he's called a tzaddik. And there's another reason. Another fact. When they met, they fell on each other's shoulders, and then Yosef was crying on his father's shoulder, and Yaakov was saying the Shema, and there was a whole big thing there. But in those 17 years, Yaakov never kissed his son. Not once. You would think, especially, we know with children, you're supposed to hug and kiss your children. It's good for them. They need to know, Mummy loves me, Daddy loves me. Yeah? Especially when I was brought up, because I'm Sephardi, and my parents are always hugging and kissing and all this and all that, and pinching cheeks and all this business. Yeah? Pinching cheeks was a big thing with us. We used to sort of put butter on our cheeks so they couldn't get a grip. Yeah? But they love doing that type of thing. So we're encouraged to do that. So hang on a minute. Yaakov didn't see his son for 22 years, and then he never kissed him until he died without having kissed him. What's going on? The answer is because Yaakov at least suspected, that having been a 17-year-old boy in Egypt with all the debauchery and the licentiousness and all the bad stuff going on, I don't want to elaborate. Surely my son must have succumbed to something. Surely somebody must have kissed him, even inadvertently. A Gentile woman would have kissed him, or anybody. And that's not good. So I can't kiss my son because I don't know. I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but I don't know where he's been, for want of a better phrase. It's not the right phrase at all, but I want to possibly convey the emotion. I don't know where. So I don't know what he's been doing. I mean, he's a young boy, and I'm sure he never wanted to, but something might have happened even by accident. So I can't do that. Now again, Yosef could have just said, Dad, you were right in suspecting, but you know what? I withheld. I was tormented day and night by Zuleika, the wife of Potiphar. She tried to tempt me, you wouldn't believe. You've got no idea how I had to, hold myself back. Now he could have just as easily come out with that. And then they might have got talking on other subjects. And then how come? And then again the truth would have come out. So Yosef did not defend himself. He didn't even broach the subject. He didn't say, Dad, why are you not kissing me? He said nothing. Again, purely in defense of other people. Just for the benefit and the well-being and the non-embarrassment of other people. He never put himself first. He always put other people ahead of him. And lastly, I'm going to end off with those two words that started that whole end, that ending. Ani Yosef. I am Yosef. There's another message that comes out, and that is a person has to be true to themselves. You have to be Ani. You mustn't live your life for him. No, I'm not saying for him. You mustn't live your life to want to be like him. Okay, you can look at other people as examples of realizing your own potential. That's something else. But to say, I'm not going to be the best person unless I'm like him. He has money, I need to have that money. He has fame, I want to have that fame. He has popularity, I need to have that popularity. That's not what we're at. Of course, we look at other people. We always look at for the best in people because we want to be the best people that we are supposed to be. Ultimately, we have to be the best. I have to be the best I that I can be. That's the only way I can describe it. Ani Yosef. Be true to yourself. Always stand by the truth. And never live a lie. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Kol Tov, be well.